Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking about the difference between analysis and summary. Essentially, analysis is thinking on the page. So it's when you explore your ideas, your thoughts, um, whereas summary is just saying what happened in a text. So this is what the story is about, or this is what the author's idea is, this is how they support their idea. So summary is saying what happens in a story, what happens in an essay, what happens in an article, whereas analysis is saying what you think about what happens, how what happens in the article supports your central claim, or supports your subclaim, or helps you understand your experiences, or for this prompt, your identity. So some key words to think about when you think about analysis are words like examination, evaluation, dissection, interpretation, reading between the lines. So not just saying what the lines say, but saying what the lines imply. Connecting textual evidence. So connection is a word that I often think of when I think of analysis. So connecting evidence from a reading to an aspect of your identity, or to an issue involving identity, or connecting experience to an idea from one of the texts, or connecting a more general idea to a more specific subclaim, or connecting ideas from different texts, or connecting a larger idea to a specific example, or a specific example to a larger idea. Essentially, one of the major goals of essays in 105 and 106 is analysis. This is one of the things that's really important to us in our writing program. Another way to think of analysis is answering how and why questions. So here are some examples. How does this textual evidence support the subclaim of my body paragraph? How does my identity connect to a larger social issue? Why is this example significant? How does it develop my claim? Why is this piece of evidence in my essay? How can I unpack the specific parts of the evidence, perhaps significant words or phrases or ideas in the evidence, to show what they mean and why they are important? So I know that that's a lot to take in, so definitely study this handout. It's on Canvas. Rewatch this video if you want. But in a nutshell, analysis is thinking on the page. It's thinking about and it's thinking that often makes connections. Um, Whereas summary is recapitulation. It's saying what happened. It's summarizing someone else's ideas. You will, of course, have a bit of summary in your essays, but the vast majority of your essays should be analysis, not summary. A good rule of thumb is to strive for 90% analysis and 10% summary. Or perhaps, a little bit more, maybe, in other words, maybe a little bit more summary, maybe 80% analysis, 20% summary. But you don't want to go more than 20% summary. Okay. So I wrote the above with the help of University of West Georgia. It's a combination of my own thoughts on analysis and some of their thoughts, just don't want to plagiarize. So I have here an example of a quote from one of our readings. Let me scroll back up. So this is a quote from the Reiner piece that talked about masculinity. So I have a quote, and then I have a summary of that quote, and then I have analysis of that quote, so you can see the difference. Sociologists Thomas A. DePetrie and Claudia Buckman conducted a study on the gender achievement gap in schools. They concluded that, quote, boys' underperformance in school has more to do with society's norms about masculinity than with anatomy, hormones, or brain structure. In fact, boys involved in music, art, drama, and foreign languages report higher levels of school engagement and get better grades than other boys. But these cultural activities are often denigrated as unmasculine. QTD and Reiner. So note that this is called an indirect quote. So just to give you a quick little MLA tip, the quote was found in the Reiner piece, but he wasn't the one that said it. These two sociologists said it. So this is how you want to structure an indirect quote. If you're quoting someone who quoted someone else, in your signal phrase or your quote introduction, you say who originally said the quote, then you give the quote, then in parentheses you put QTD, which is an abbreviation for quoted in Reiner, or quoted in whomever. Okay, so here's a summary of of the quotation. It doesn't have any analysis. It's just saying what the quote means. Andrew Reiner describes a study that was conducted by sociologists which reveals that many boys downplay their own intelligence and creativity because it is viewed as unmasculine to do well in school and to be artistic. The study notes that this has nothing to do with biology or hormones, but with how boys are taught to perform their masculinity. So this is a beautiful summary, but there's no analysis. There's no interpretation. There's no unpacking. There's no thinking. It's just describing what was originally said. So you do want to have a little bit of summary in your essay. The parts where you're most likely to have summary are when you're introducing a quote. Sometimes you want to summarize the article briefly before the quote, just so the quote makes sense. So sometimes you're going to have a little bit of summary in your signal phrase. Or if instead of quoting the article, you decide to summarize part of it, then you'll also have some summary. But the vast majority of a body paragraph should be analysis. So here's an example of a body paragraph that has a lot of analysis. It opens with a subclaim, which is the main idea of the body paragraph. A subclaim is always debatable, and it always supports the larger claim, and it functions as your topic sentence. Then there's textual evidence, where there's a little bit of summary when the textual evidence is introduced, and a little bit of summary just summarizing the evidence itself, and that summary is, of course, cited. Then there's a lot of analysis of the evidence, and then you have closing sentences. And the closing sentences also function as analysis, because they're not summarizing the evidence, they're explaining the significance of the evidence, the larger significance. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. Just scroll down so we can see it all. Okay. Masculinity can become harmful and even toxic when it discourages boys from experiencing the full range of intellectual and creative possibilities available to them. Note that that's the opening topic sentence that states the main subclaim of the body paragraph. And everything that follows, all of the evidence, all of the analysis is going to support and prove this subclaim. So now we have a summary of the part of the Reiner that quotes the sociological study, and it is cited. And then you have a small little quote from the Reiner that's also cited. And then everything else here and everything else here is all analysis. So here's the evidence. Sociologists Thomas A. DiPietri and Claudia Buckman's study about American boys reveals that many boys downplay their own intelligence and creativity because it is viewed as unmasculine to do well in school and to be artistic. This has nothing to do with biology or hormones, but with how boys are taught to perform their masculine identities. So because this is a summary or a paraphrase of the reading, it is cited. And then what follows is analysis. We are often taught to think of gender differences as genetic. Yet this study reveals that the differences are socialized, not inborn. Therefore, there may be many boys out there who would love to do well in school, to participate in music, art, drama, foreign languages, but who are discouraged from doing so by our dominant gender norms. So there you have there you have analysis that explains why the textual evidence is significant, how it challenges our narratives and assumptions about gender, and it also explains the consequences of the norms that are described, right? How the consequences could have to do with how it affects boys' ability to participate in certain activities. So it talks about the significance, the narratives and assumptions that it challenges, as well as the kinds of consequences that the evidence outlines, or the kinds of consequences that could come about because of what the evidence describes. So there's a lot of thinking happening here. Now you have the next chunk of analysis, which connects the evidence to the student's own personal experience. I myself Was often bullied in school because I was in drama club. One particular group of boys, all football and basketball players, would hiss words like faggot and homo at me when they passed me in the hall. Though I did not let that stop me from pursuing drama, their bullying made me feel ashamed of my passion. Their hyper-masculine presentation may have seemed like the natural way to be a man, and my own more feminine presentation may have seemed like what was strange or unnatural, but this study reveals that this is not actually the case. Men are taught to perform this kind of hyper-masculinity. So here, the analysis really unpacks how the textual evidence helps the student understand why his own chosen identity as a part of a performing arts subculture, a sort of quote drama kid, was in conflict with the masculine gender identity performed and enforced by his peers. So there's a lot of complex thinking happening here that puts his own experience in conversation with the textual evidence and explains how the textual evidence helps him understand his own identity. Then you have two concluding sentences here that braid the textual evidence with the student's identity and explains the larger meaning of his specific experiences. And you want to close your paragraphs in a similar manner. You want to close your paragraphs by explaining the larger significance of your body paragraph. Moreover, though their bullying caused me much suffering, DePetrie and Buckman's research highlights that I may not have been the only one in pain. To amputate part of one's self, to cut off one's interests in school or art or language may cause the much greater pain. And beautifully said, very well written. Okay, so use this handout as a way to make sure that your paragraphs are mostly analysis without a lot of summary. Use this handout as a way to restructure your body paragraphs or as a model for how to structure your body paragraphs. And if you follow this model, you'll have pretty well organized body paragraphs that have clear subclaims, have clear analysis, and then have clear evidence, and then have analysis. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.